In the last part of this deep dive, we took a stroll down memory lane, uncovering the past of Star Wars Theory, where we looked at how he had built his channel up from covering the lore of Star Wars, to Theory moralizing mockery and the instances where he couldn't handle even the softest of criticisms. However, I certainly touched a nerve with that last video, but in this part of the Star Wars Theory saga, we will be going through the remaining key points, touching on the beef between Theory and Paul Tassi, and exploring the other side to these events.
I'm gonna go on to fucking Steve or Greg or Tommy or whoever, right?
Where in the last video we saw how Theory had mimicked some of the stuff you would normally see in a Fresh and Fit video or something Andrew Tate would normally spout.
Right, but men will unconditionally love women and children because we don't want anything from them. We just want peace of mind, we want love, we want loyalty, respect, communication. That's it. And sex.
Which, yes, before anyone says anything, people have called Theory the Andrew Tate of Star Wars before, which is pretty wild. But even funnier is when Theory had seen Charmin, the director of Star Wars, tweet out that it's time for a woman to shape Star Wars, which just looks to be your casual rage bait, since Charmin also says stuff like,
I enjoy making men uncomfortable.
Although if we were talking about Theory here, she wouldn't be wrong, since the guy made it into this big thing, to the point he contacted Sadi Khan, who is a relationship counselor who has appeared on talks with Andrew Tate before. Really trying to appeal to that demographic, eh, Theory? Where he orchestrated an interview between him and her to talk about the following subjects on his Theory Talks channel: what women want, OnlyFans, red pill men, breakups, trust issues, and why relationships fail. Although I just love this question by Theory.
But are those real relationships or are they more of a transaction?
Pure gold, my good sir, pure gold. But the main issue that came from this stream had been when he asked Sadi about the tweet in question, to which she came out with how women in Western cultures enjoy victimhood, and how they want to be victims, so it will allow themselves to twist it into becoming a local hero.
Yeah, I think what happens particularly in Western cultures where women have it so easy but they pretend they're not, what happens with women who generally have it quite easy, they enjoy victimhood because that's the only way that they can feel part of other people's struggle. What makes human beings feel alive is when they're a bit struggling, when they're going through something, where they've gone through a bit of trauma, they've gone through something, it makes them feel alive. What's happened with women in the Western world particularly is because there is no real oppression, but they want to be a victim so bad because victimhood is just a way of kind of shortcutting sympathy. Everyone just, it's just shortcut entitlement. You get what you want without having to earn it because you just happen to be a victim. So what happens is they want to start finding places where they can be a victim and then transform it so that they can become a hero. So what they'll do is say, oh, we need more women in this particular sport. Nobody watches them. Nobody wants women in there, but they'll just say, stamp their authority so they can be a local hero. Then we need more women in Star Wars. No, we don't. No one women don't even watch Star Wars. But they don't even care about it. It's a man's little thing. Let them have it. But they want to be like, oh, there's such a deprivation. We got to be in it so they can be a mini hero. When you don't have anything outside of your gender as a way of being proud of yourself, you use your gender as a shortcut for entitlement and heroic stances. So I would just say, unfortunately, it is the norm in Western cultures to kind of over-identify with your gender and then over-identify with victimhood. It's a way of getting a shortcut to being a hero, and as a result it's just there to design. And also what it does is keeps the power in the hands of the women, and whenever you redirect power entirely to women, just like if it was entirely to men, it creates an unhealthy society. If the power is totally in men's hands, it would be unhealthy. If it's totally in women's hands, it's also unhealthy.
But this had caused quite the uproar in the divided fandom, to the point women on TikTok started taking Sadi's quote and overlaying themselves cosplaying or showing off how much of a Star Wars fan they are, which escalated into people calling Theory a misogynist, which is quite the stretch as Theory hasn't got a track record for any vitriol or hatred towards women. And if Theory really hated women, why would he go out on a limb here and defend Moses Ingram when she had been receiving quite a lot of hate for simply playing a role in a show?
But as for all of these racist comments that are going to her DM, I mean, this is the girl's first introduction to Star Wars. This is what she's going to remember. That's not what I want her to remember. As Star Wars fans, I think we're so much more classy than that. I think we have so much love. Now this is going to make
headlines everywhere. They're going to say Star Wars fans. Like, that's not what we're about. We are so much more loving and so much more classy than that, than to be racist and just so ugly, you know? And I know it's not all of us, it's just a select few, but I've always been very, very, very candid with what I think about bullying. You know, whether you are a regular person like you or me, who gets bullied for liking Star Wars when you were a kid or growing up or even as an adult, or you are an actor like Hayden Christensen.
Which prompted Fury to make a response on his channel, where he denies being a misogynist, but doesn't say why he had the reaction he did. But maybe Fury thought it had been obvious why he reacted like that in the live stream, although even if you think so, you should still give a reason so you could debunk the claims being made. But my favorite part from this video is where he doubles down on how e-girls are opportunists.
I see a lot of people calling me opportunist, this and that, because I said previously that e-girls are opportunists, and I truly stand by that. What? I think women who provocatively show themselves online on OnlyFans and this and that, and no judgment to that if that's what you want to do to make your money, but there are a lot of opportunistic people, especially women, because they are able to really manipulate men easily through the physical with OnlyFans, which is what that is, and they really grift to appease to fans in a fandom, whether it be Marvel or Star Wars or whatever it might be, and I think it's disingenuous. You know, I'm not a big fan of that. I'm not a big fan of tricking someone and thinking that you're a big fan of something that's really special to me and a lot of people in order to make money sexually, and it's just not my thing.
Which I don't know about you, but if I was being accused of being a misogynist, doubling down on e-girls being opportunists isn't exactly what I would say, as it's counterproductive in this scenario. After this, the Rolling Stones and NBC News had written their articles about the story revolving around this subject, and Fury responds in, "Rolling Stone and NBC write hit pieces about me. I've had enough." Where Fury claims that the only reason these articles had been written about him, or people on Twitter had been coming at him, was simply because he has an opinion.
Push the false narrative that women are nothing more than opportunists. The more they will absolutely dunk on you and continue to show everyone how much of a clown you are. Man, you really are, honestly, you must be an idiot. I've seen you float around a bunch of times, like, you're a fucking idiot. You really have to be. I've explained it so many times, and if you can't understand the words that come out of my mouth, then that's on you. I can't help you there. That's your own issue. I don't know what happened to you that you can't understand things that I say, but that goes for everyone else too. If I've ever said that women don't belong in Star Wars, please tell me, show me. I would love to see it. But until that day happens, y'all need to just shut the fuck up. Seriously. This is absolutely ridiculous. This is so ridiculous. You guys hate me so much and you just want to cancel me. Why? Because I'm opinionated? Because I speak my mind? Because I'm honest about how I feel about things? Because I'm an actual fan? Because I don't like the sequel trilogy? Get over yourselves. There's gonna be people who don't like things you like. If you have a problem with that, then that's on you. Seriously. I grew up in a world where people had differing opinions, and then you go and grab a burger, you know? The sequel trilogy, in my opinion, was done really poorly. George didn't like it, Nick Killer doesn't like it. A lot of people don't like it. A lot of people do like it, cool. That has nothing to do with being a misogynist. That just means that some people didn't like the film. That's it.
Which doesn't really help his case. And he has these moments sprinkled throughout this video, when the reason they jumped on the story had been because of the controversial takes coming from Saga, saying women don't like Star Wars and how women enjoy victimhood. But one moment I do find funny, which will come into play later, is when Fury calls the title of the Rolling Stone article clickbait, when he too dabbles in clickbait from time to time, which is another example of the rules for thee, but just not for me. But in the last 2 minutes of the video, we finally get Fury acknowledging the reaction he gave, to which he called it to be a scoff at the hot take.
And her response is her response. And she said women don't even like Star Wars. And I scoffed. Am I not allowed to scoff and say like, wow, that's a hot take? What is the big problem here? I don't understand. People are so blinded by their hatred for me because what, I don't like the sequel trilogy? Because I truly like Star Wars the way it was and I want them to continue along that path. You know, George does not like the sequels. I know people who know him. I'm not talking out of my ass. He does not like them. He thinks they're shit. He thinks they ruined his story.
Like, I can see where some would come to the conclusion that Fury is a misogynist, from such things as thinking e-girls are the same thing as women who do OnlyFans, or how he describes what women want in a relationship versus what a man wants, painting them in a negative light, and now this. But what I think this all bottles down to is Fury not thinking before he acts, and not thinking about how this could reflect on him in the eyes of the public. But I don't think Theory is a full-blown misogynist here. A red-pilled Andy, sure, but a misogynist? No, especially when you factor in the many times Fury uses words in conversations while having absolutely no understanding of what the word even means. And while we are on the talk of journalism, let's look at the next segment in this video where we talk about Fury's beef with Paul Tassi.
These people, man, just like desperate. Like, this is your facts?
Who is a journalist for the website Forbes, where he writes articles for them on current events happening in and out of media. However, these articles are more of opinion pieces rather than unbiased reviews of the events that took place, with him getting things wrong in places here and there. And his reputation online isn't great, with some thinking of him as a rat within the world of journalism and others not being too fond of him. And this is where Star Wars Theory comes into play, as he absolutely loathes this guy to the point he has made the claim that Paul stole one of his ideas for a Star Wars TV show.
But also, it's funny because this guy is always ripping on me. I guess that's how he gets some sort of clout. But he's literally just ripping on my idea.
I know, right? The horror. However, the beef with these two would certainly intensify as Fury went on to make this video. And the promotion is just as dramatic as you may come to expect from Fury. The truth comes out in this one. They are the architects of their own destruction. Bro's really role-playing as Thrawn from Rebels, isn't he? But I thought he didn't like Disney Star Wars anymore, right? Even though Paul is a shifty character online, Theory goes completely overboard in his expose video on him, where he claims that Paul has written slanderous articles about him on Forbes, when this may very well be the first one Paul had mentioned him in, as when searching for Star Wars Theory in his other articles relating to Star Wars, I haven't found any other mention of Theory. The only article I could find that mentions him is how the Acolyte had caused the fandom to plunge into civil war, which is just as dramatic as how Theory words things. Maybe these guys should go bowling sometime, seeming as these two like to mislead people every now and again. Where Theory had the opportunity to go through why we shouldn't trust Paul when it comes to understanding what happened in the events he talks on, or how Paul has a biased viewpoint that may dictate his ability to assess cases in the future. How Paul will often only talk on half a story that doesn't concern one side of the political spectrum, which I think he would have some pretty good points there, but Theory says, that's too much work, let's just cry for half an hour about how the article slandered him because Paul had called him the centerpiece for the toxic side of the fandom. Also, I love the intention of the beginning was to be this super serious video with the captions over the black screen, which may have come across like that if he didn't throw in some Star Wars music in the background. Where the article goes on to say how Theory constantly bashed the Acolyte, which isn't true, as Theory in his coverage of the show had conducted himself in the same way as he did with every other show, giving it a fair shake, regardless of how others felt about it. While Theory did think the show was bad for bad writing and how it broke canon, he also talked about some of the things he liked in the beginning episodes, and I don't think you can call this to be bashing the show, even though I am critical of Theory being raw and vivid to the point he often lands himself into trouble, but I think in the context of reviewing a show, it shouldn't be considered bashing. It's like when people claim criticism to be an attack, which in both cases people do this to deter people from giving YouTubers or shows they like criticism, even though Theory's criticisms are about as useful as an ashtray on a motorcycle. In this video, Theory also makes a good point, which can be explained better by saying that just because there are a few bad apples doesn't mean you have to cut down the entire tree, which equates to just because a minority of the fan base could be bad people, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are all bad people. However, he also flashes Paul's tweet here that shows that one of Theory's fans had gone out of their way to text Paul on his private number, which he adds to his point. But on Twitter, he writes, "Bro created a fake text and blames me. What's next? You're gonna get the runs and blame me for that too?" Which begs the question, if you believe these are to be fake, then why would you use it to back up a point? So far, we have seen where Theory had been wronged in these events. However, the next won't quite be the same, as we need to look back to the previous year in order to gather us some much needed context for a later segment in how Fury will do absolutely anything to maintain this good guy persona he has built up over the years. But what this segment will show is the side to Fury that he would rather keep tucked away and hidden in the shadows.
I've really humbled myself, and simply just by looking around.
Back in October 2023, Fury's former editor Star Wars Elseworlds had made a claim against him when he saw that Fury had been advertising on Twitter for a new co-host for his Nerd Fury channel, where Fury had spoken on wanting someone who won't always agree with his take, which is interesting, since we have seen when people do that, giving Fury criticism or correcting him on things, he holds that against them. So Elseworlds made a claim that Fury had done that to him back a few months ago when critiquing one of his fan fictions, and after he had an argument with him on how he had been treating him. According to Elseworlds, people wanted something more solid to attach to these claims, to prove what he had been saying to be the truth, rather than just making a meaningless claim. So Elseworlds had provided screenshots of text messages that date back to 2020, and Discord messages that were a few months old. But the narrative people had ran with last year had been that Elseworlds was salty about not getting a shout out, and that had been the reason for sharing the private messages, when that wasn't the motivation behind it, and it really shows the level of understanding those who made the narrative had at the time, considering what he had shown debunks that theory. The text messages are from when Elseworlds used to edit for Fury's videos, and showed them having two conversations on the topic of crediting Elseworlds in the beginning portion of Fury's videos, which isn't unheard of for an editor to be getting credit on top of being paid. But here, Fury acts like it's a foreign concept, and other members of the community had acted the same way, and Fury snaps back at Elseworlds with, "I won't do that." However, the main reason Fury didn't want to credit Elseworlds for the work in the video had been because he didn't want to distract the viewers from his content or the topic in the video, and that he shouldn't have to acknowledge Elseworlds in the beginning portion of the videos because he was paying him to do a job. However, Fury in the first conversation does offer to put credit in the description of the videos, which will be important later on, as he had offered this to him after Elseworlds requested for credit to be linked to his channel, which is good of Fury to do this, showing that while he may not be comfortable with putting credit in the video, he isn't against throwing it in the description to facilitate Elseworlds' needs, since Fury valued the work he did for him, but Elseworlds gives Fury his concerns that not that many people look in the descriptions of the videos, but had been open to the idea of not having a mention in the videos either, which at the end of the conversation, Fury acts like he only saw Elseworlds as a simple worker, someone who could provide a service, which Elseworlds felt that had been disrespectful to say that, especially when you realize that Fury treats his employees like they are more than how he describes here. And so Elseworlds had spoken to a friend about it, so he could vent to them, which Fury had spoken about this being unprofessional of him to do so. Which brings us to the second conversation, which Fury acts pretty poorly towards Elseworlds here, talking down to him with such messages as, "You clearly don't understand. So you still don't understand," when Fury had made his stance on crediting Elseworlds in the video pretty clear in the previous conversation, which the conversation ends with Fury giving Elseworlds an ultimatum that they either talk it out or they part ways, and Elseworlds leaves it up to Fury, possibly out of frustration that he couldn't get his point across to him. However, this didn't stop the pair from working together. In fact, Elseworlds only stopped working for Fury because of personal issues happening in his life, which again he was quite reasonable when telling Fury about this in February 2021. But another important thing to look at is how Fury had been treating Elseworlds after the conversation about the crediting thing, telling Elseworlds that he is comfortable with him and his work, that he is his guy, that the two of them are cool, that Elseworlds made his life more productive, and that he helped him out a ton, calling Elseworlds his friend. However, when Elseworlds had thrown in his notice telling Fury that he wouldn't be working for him in a couple of months' time, Fury had given him so much praise for all the hard work Elseworlds had done for him, and that if there was anything he could do for Elseworlds to stay on, all he had to do was let Fury know, even asking him if more money would change things, telling Elseworlds how much it was going to suck to lose him as an editor, how the next editor won't be someone he trusts like Elseworlds. But Elseworlds had even offered to help him find another editor so he wasn't leaving Theory high and dry, and Theory hoped that Elseworlds wouldn't become a stranger. So Elseworlds had been a pretty reasonable and nice guy to work with, right? So what's the issue? Where did this friendship begin to crumble? Well, let's move on to the Discord messages in 2023, as something happened that led Elseworlds to thinking they weren't on good terms, to which Theory acted like he had no idea what he had been talking about, going on to say that Elseworlds had just been paranoid. But a month later, Theory had posted a work in progress to Discord for a fan fiction so people could see what was to come in the future.
You can do this, Ahsoka.
Snips, what are you doing out here?
I've come to talk to you. What have you done?
I did what I had to. The Jedi betrayed us. We don't need them.
And Elseworlds, like he had done before so when he used to edit for Theory, had seen the video and simply gave Theory his thoughts on it, which shouldn't have been a problem for Theory considering Elseworlds was his friend. A friend that he had gone to for suggestions and advice on things in the past. But here he responds with, "Bro, it's my fan fiction." Sounds kinda like what he would make fun of Leslie Headland for saying.
I mean, it's my show. Yeah, Leslie, it's your show. Because it's my show.
And then another month had passed before Elseworlds had asked Theory about something that happened with another person so he could get closure from it. And Theory tells him that he doesn't want to be involved in his drama, which would be fine, but he also assumes what Elseworlds' intentions had been, and again talking about his opinion like it's a fact, which Elseworlds denies this to be one, which Elseworlds had a pop at him, writing a few messages asking what his problem had been, expressing his frustrations with Theory, to the point he calls him bipolar due to, from his perspective, Theory will in one moment be really nice to him and in the next be rude and dismissive. Even though I don't agree with calling Theory bipolar, I think it's better to say that he just simply doesn't think before acting or doesn't take other people's feelings into consideration when replying to these things. He also brings up how only a month ago he gave him some helpful feedback on his fanfiction and he was pretty dismissive of it, which Theory had replied with this rant. "That's funny you say it's helpful feedback, when it's more so condescending, like you are the all-knowing guy who wants to change my work constantly. I never asked for your input. Or what could be better in your mind? Go make your own fanfic. You did this when you used to edit for me too. It's not constructive, it's elitist. There's different ways of saying it. You are very self-righteous and love to impose your beliefs on everyone, including me. I knew you were like this the time you first badmouthed me, when you edited for me, telling people publicly about our work. That is so inappropriate for a work scenario and friend scenario. You are always interjecting your beliefs on me and pushing me to do this and that for your own sake. I'm not going to do that. I'm not bipolar. I just put up boundaries when you try and push your way or beliefs. That's not how I work. And I don't care if you're Hollywood or not. That's some bullshit. Don't message me again. Take care." Which Theory had then blocked Elseworlds, but then Elseworlds continued the conversation over email so he could address the things Theory had said to him, where he denies that he had pushed his beliefs onto others and questions why he didn't bring up the specific times he had supposedly done so in order to prove his point. Elseworlds ends the email by telling Theory that he is the same as every other big creator on the platform, with him being egotistical and arrogant, which yes, these messages do show that Theory isn't exactly the humble creator he proclaims to be, and actually has a very fragile ego. Which Theory had replied to the email with, "Nice to see you make the same outlandish claims as those nutjobs online who gunned for me. I knew I was right about you. Fame didn't get to my head. I'm still the same guy to my real friends. You're just a two-faced elitist guy who thinks he's God's gift, and the fact that you don't see how you are speaks worlds. You never had my back. You would chime in with others online. You think people never sent me the messages on Discord? Lol. I can break down a ton here, but I really have given you enough of my time. Take care. Don't message me, dude. Blocking you here too. By the way, the whole credit thing is so insane. I was paying you. Acting like you were doing work for free and using credit as a form of contention? No editor has ever asked for credit when I'm paying them for work. You are literally the only one trying to use me. Get out of here, man. 3 years later and he is still hung up on the crediting thing. I guess he lied when he said, "We are cool now." But here is the thing. If Elseworlds had been this two-faced character Fury is spinning here, and if he always knew him to be this type of person ever since Elseworlds spoke about the conversation with one of his friends on Discord, then why would Fury continue working with him all the way into 2021? Since their conversation about credit took place in July 2020, why would Fury allow Elseworlds to end the work they had been doing together on Elseworlds' terms, not his? Why would Fury give so much praise to this two-faced elitist guy he always knew him to be? Why would he say, "If there's anything I can do to make you stay, let me know"? Why would you want such a terrible individual who pushed his beliefs onto you to stay in your employ? Since Fury had said Elseworlds had used credit as a form of contention, had been unprofessional towards him, or even had badmouthed him, why would Fury say that the backup editor wouldn't be someone he trusted as much as Elseworlds? After the conversations that took place in 2020, how Elseworlds made his life easier, telling Elseworlds that he would like to collaborate with him sometime, hoping that he wouldn't be a stranger. If he had been so awful to Fury in the past, if Fury always knew that Elseworlds had simply been looking to use him for his own ends. See, it doesn't really make much sense once you start to look at the messages versus what he says here, which this either means that Fury meant none of the nice things he had said to Elseworlds over the years, manipulating and gaslighting Elseworlds into thinking they had been on good terms following the conversation about crediting him in the videos, or that Fury did mean all of these nice gestures towards Elseworlds and had looked past the conversation back in July 2020, but as soon as he got some criticism from Elseworlds, he changed his outlook on him, dug up the previously resolved issues in an attempt to get a one-up in the argument, and acted like he always knew Elseworlds had been such an awful person, basically rewriting the past based on how he feels in the current events. But what we can say for certain is that these messages and kind gestures look pretty hollow now, and that's no one else's fault other than Star Wars Fury's, for running with his emotions to the point he burned the bridge with someone he held in high regard for the smallest of things. And the sad part is, Fury could have prevented this outcome by listening to what Levi had to say back in 2021. Which brings us to November 2023, where Fury had seen Simon Talks bringing up two of these messages, which had been very selective on his part and didn't help in matters. But where Fury could have given more context behind these messages, he chose not to, and responded by giving us a very different description than what we saw in the text and Discord messages that served to make himself look better than the opposition, instead of providing the truth behind the messages. Where throughout the discourse online, Fury claims a whole bunch of things happened without providing the necessary evidence to back any of these claims up. And he even made a huge deal out of revealing private messages or business emails to poison the well further, considering in his most recent expose video, he had no quarrels with exposing private conversations between him and Star Wars Explained. But here he sings a different tune, which is another instance of how he can show off the private conversations with Alex whenever he wants, but when Elseworlds does it, it isn't allowed, which doesn't make any sense. Fury in the discourse had claimed that Elseworlds had demanded for a shoutout so many times. However, from what we have to work with, it doesn't look to be very demanding in the text messages. But Fury had also painted himself out to be this really nice guy who had done all of these nice things for Elseworlds, and yet he still wanted credit on top of all of these things. However, there is some truth sprinkled in this tweet, but in other parts, Fury isn't telling the full story here. As yes, he hired Elseworlds to work as an editor for him, but he only started putting credit in the description of the videos after they had the conversation about Elseworlds requesting for a mention in the videos, since he offers putting credit in the description as a substitute for the mention. However, the picture he is painting in this tweet is that he had already been doing this prior to the conversation that we saw saw, but he wouldn't have offered that to Elseworlds if he had already been doing it. Fury had also given mentions to Elseworlds before on his live streams and Instagram stories. However, Elseworlds contests this, claiming that it wasn't quite to the extent Fury claims here, since he paints the picture that Elseworlds was greedy for clout, that he was an unreasonable character who couldn't be pleased no matter what Fury had done for him, which is disingenuous, since there are text messages that disprove that logic. As for his Twitter and Discord, I couldn't find any mentions of Elseworlds coming from his accounts, and the only thing I could find that is linked to the Instagram stories had been this message showing Elseworlds to be acknowledging the mention. And in the text messages, we can see Fury telling him about this and the several live streams, which Elseworlds says, "I know you have," which I appreciate. However, when he brings up the Disney Plus pass, this would be known as a business expense, since Elseworlds would be responsible for gathering the necessary clips or screenshots from the shows to be used in Fury's videos. Without the subscription, Elseworlds wouldn't have been able to complete the task. Sure enough, it had been nice of Fury to provide Elseworlds with a year's subscription rather than making him pay for it, but I don't think it's quite out of the goodness of his heart as he makes out here. However, something that Fury didn't care to mention had been when Elseworlds offered to pay Fury back for the 100GB Google Drive he got for him, which again would be a business expense, but Fury declined. So Fury wasn't exactly being very honest and forthcoming in this drama, and throughout it, Fury paints himself as this great guy, while Elseworlds had been this awful person, even going so far as to poison the well by saying that Elseworlds had been doing all of this because he wants drama. But hey, it wouldn't be a Star Wars Fury tweet without that dramatic flair at the end. "This won't end well for you," which someone came away from Fury's tweet somehow thinking that Elseworlds had been extorting him, which Fury doesn't deny, and in fact goes on to say, "Yeah, I'm gonna seek my legal team if he wants to keep going." Which sounds like to me, if you don't get off my back about this, then I'm going to sue you. Such a brave guy, right guys? However, when Fury had offered Elseworlds more money when he worked for him, Elseworlds had declined the offer, so I don't get how you can make the claim that he had been extorting you, when he clearly wasn't looking to use you. Which Elseworlds had denied what Fury had been claiming in his tweets all along. But then Fury makes another tweet telling Elseworlds of how he lives in a fantasy world, that Elseworlds isn't even a fart in his world. And then Fury turns into a broken record player by bringing up how he was paying Elseworlds once again, which undermines what he just said. He then makes this claim: "Over these last few days, I've gotten so many DMs from people you have harassed horribly over the years." Again, talking about something like it's a fact without showing any evidence to support this allegation, but I guess to Fury, allegations are all the evidence he needs, right? Like, does Fury actually hold any standards to what should be considered the truth? Like, facts can be whatever he wants them to be. And Fury then makes another set of claims towards Elseworlds that you will have to see to believe. "You are a tyrant, an opportunist, and a provocateur." Sounds like a projection to me. However, while we are on the topic of opportunists, Fury had been haunted so much by what he previously said about e-girls and OnlyFans models being opportunists that he decided to come out of the closet as an opportunist himself. Which again, an opportunist is someone who tries to gain something from opportunities as and when they arise, regardless if it's against their own principles, morals, or ethics. To an opportunist, an opportunity to gain is all fair game to them, which is even more mind-boggling that Fury would call himself one, since he has often fought against being labeled as a grifter. So here is what Fury had to say about the opportunist claim. E-girls and opportunists. 6 months or so ago, I made a tweet about e-girls and OnlyFans girls who incorporate Star Wars and nerd fandom into their online posts and personality, saying they are fake opportunists. I don't agree with what I said. To be honest, I never did. Sure, if they don't give a fuck about said fandom and use it to pander to their audience, yeah, it's not genuine, but honestly, that's not my business. Am I the genuine police? The elitist police? No. They're playing to their market, and to be honest, No one is going to them for lore content, so I don't really see the problem. It's like dress up, and there's a big market for that. Clearly, I did exactly what people do to me, which is allow myself to believe what others tell me about people. Without divulging more than necessary, I had a friend who was very upset with some women in the OnlyFans space, and she was telling me for years how unfair this was, that they got more opportunities. And so for over a year of hearing this, I thought I was being a good friend by making a post like that, after all the horrible things they do to her and other stuff. I was sticking up for my friend. In my mind, I don't like that I made that tweet, and I don't agree with what I said. I have a few friends online in the OnlyFans space who were like, Nia, what the fuck? Why did you say that shit? And when I explained in detail to them privately, they understood the backstory, but it still hasn't sat well with me since then, considering it was a public post. I'd love to give full context, but alas, I don't want to make a mess of things, and I believe it's just best to move on. As for the opportunist comment, I think we are all opportunists to some extent, including me. I make money from talking about Star Wars. While that isn't my motive, it is still fact. And for those whose money is their motive, it's not my business or place to be elitist about it. That's ego. I'm not happy I allowed others' influence and constant bitching to sway me to believe things about people or a group of people that I never met before. It's something that is done to me daily for years. I know how that feels, and I don't want to be like those people. To anyone I hurt with that tweet, I'm sorry. I figured I'd be transparent with my thoughts, as my values have changed, and I want to be real about it. And people were trying to tell me that Star Wars Theory wasn't a jester in the last video, but with tweets like this, I think it's safe to say that Theory certainly has a way with words. Imagine being against something like being called a grifter, but then going out of your way to call yourself an opportunist. It's like he uses these big words to try and sound sophisticated or intelligent, but hasn't taken the time to find out what these words mean before using them. Which brings us to his most recent drama, where all of this thing that he just said will be completely debunked. In his most recent drama involving Star Wars Explained.
You don't want to know the truth about the people that you think are so great. They've actually been absolute bullies for the last 8 years to me for no apparent reason.
The drama began between these two channels when Molly Damon had shared a letter to Twitter calling for the demonetization of Nerdrotic, RK Outpost, and Geeks and Gamers, where the letter goes into detail that this had been in response to these channels going after Amanda Sternberg for what she had said in her response to the Acolytes getting cancelled. However, the consensus online throughout the Star Wars community and other communities orbiting Star Wars Theory is that Star Wars Explained had tried to demonetize or deplatform Theory's channel, when that's not what the letter says at all. The letter actually lays out the goals very clearly, with the intentions to be going after the channels Nerdrotic, Geeks and Gamers, and RK Outpost, and Theory's video title didn't exactly help in understanding what had happened in these events, and only serves to poison any meaningful understanding you could have, with the video being titled Star Wars Explained tries to demonetize Star Wars Theory, where Theory actually reads the letter out for his audience to witness in the same video.
Enough is enough. The Star Wars fandom demands that YouTube enforce its community guidelines against prolonged insults and incitement of targeted harassment towards women of color by demonetizing YouTube channels Geeks and Gamers, Ryan Kinnell, RK Outpost, and Nerdrotic.
So Theory knows that he wasn't mentioned in this part of the letter, but had been mentioned later as an example, with it being, hate had become so profitable that even a big channel has gotten in on the action. Since the author's reasoning had been that if these channels weren't making any money from their videos or streams, then they wouldn't make these types of videos. Since people on the other side of the fandom who are more favorable to what Disney puts out calls these channels and other channels that review the shows under a deeper lens as to be grifters. So it is pretty disingenuous that Fury would call his video this, since he knows he was just mentioned as an example and not listed with the other channels that the author wished to be demonetized. But because Molly had shared the letter to Twitter, this means to people that she had in fact created the letter, but she tells a different story that she had gotten it from an outside source. However, it doesn't matter if she had created the letter or not. By sharing it out, it shows where her principles lie, that demonetizing channels is okay in her book, which I don't agree with going after someone's livelihood at all, and it is pretty scummy to do this, and isn't a good look on those parading these letters around, and will only serve to make those who share them look worse than those they condemn, which they certainly shot themselves in the foot with this stunt. However, in later videos, Fury will claim that his livelihood was under attack as well, when that wasn't the case at all.
And all through a coordinated attack on me and my fellow peers who disliked The Acolyte by rewriting Ripley Pod, Molly Damon, Star Wars Explained, and so many other people. They wanted to take the food out of our mouth. They wanted to destroy our livelihoods by demonetizing YouTube channels Geeks and Gamers, Ryan Kinnell RK Outpost, and Nerdrotic. They wanted to destroy our livelihoods.
What do you mean your livelihood? You weren't under attack, Fury. They used you as an example. They listed Nerdrotic, Geeks and Gamers, and RK Outpost for demonetization. That didn't include you. It's like he wants to be the victim so bad that he will just make shit up to make it happen. But to Fury, Molly sharing this letter around means that it wasn't her who was behind it, but the person who Molly is married to, who owns the channel Star Wars Explained, aka Alex.
And I know Alex is behind all this, but he's just such a sackless guy that he just can't do it himself, and he has to have his wife do it for him.
Which is the first time I've heard of a guilt by association claim of this kind. Guilt by marriage, is it, Fury? But remember before when Fury held the moral high ground over Elseworlds for making private messages public without his consent? Well, Fury betrays that logic in this video since he shows the private conversations between him and Alex, which shows that when he does it, it's perfectly acceptable and justified because he has a hunch that Alex is involved somehow. But when others do it to him, then it's an unreasonable stunt, like Fury's principles change depending on the scenario. In a nutshell, Fury brings out these emails between him and Alex, going line by line, hoping to find anything he can twist into something negative to help him paint Alex in a bad light, when we don't even know if Alex had even known about the letter before Molly had posted it. And whenever Fury needs to disprove something said in the emails, Fury believes all he requires is his own anecdotal stories, which for all we know could have been manufactured from his own imagination. And the thing with anecdotal evidence is it's only as credible as the person using that type of evidence, which I don't think this is the guy I would trust to be a reliable narrator. He's blinded by his emotions, acts like a massive drama queen, discredits criticism to be people attacking him, thinks that his words are all he needs when accusing people of things on Twitter, even threatening people with legal action when he wants the drama to end. He isn't consistent with his own principles, and if any past associate calls him out, then they are all just nut jobs trying to claw at his fame while claiming that he doesn't think he is famous. Later in the video, Fury brings up some irrelevant things to garner some sympathy from the audience, like he is collecting victim points hoping to get that prize on the shelf, when he was never the victim at all, bringing up that Pablo had made fun of him and attributing it to how other YouTubers had bullied him for the last 8 years, when this guy is like, what, 33 years old? And he even brings up that he was bullied in his childhood, which just feels like he is shoehorning these things in so he can get some sympathy from the audience. However, he also brings up something that I think is the real motivation behind this video, using the letter and who posted it to get back at Alex for something he had said back in 2018, where according to Star Wars Theory, Star Wars Explained had previously attacked his channel with one video in his This Week in Clickbait series. So one question remains, what could be so bad to be labeled as an attack?
But last week it was announced that Lucasfilm had apparently changed all of the posters for Solo: A Star Wars Story to remove all of the blasters, and the way some of my peers covered it was downright laughable.
So Disney has decided to remove the blaster from Han Solo on this latest wave of posters.
So in recent events, Disney has now removed all blasters in the upcoming movie posters for Solo. Makes me wonder if it were episode 9 coming out, would they remove blasters from that poster as well?
Oh my gosh. Oh my god. So they removed them from all posters?
So the reason behind this is a bit unclear, but it can be assumed that because of the media uproar about guns following the Stoneman Douglas High School shooting in Parkland, Florida last month, is what this is all about.
That poster used to be that poster. Oh my god.
This falls in line with Disney's agenda in episode 8 with Canto Bight, I think.
When I first heard about this, I watched these videos and a few more. I read a bunch of similar articles, and everyone is acting like Disney and Lucasfilm are trying to take the wars out of Star Wars. The way you would read about it, it seems like every Solo poster across the world has had their blasters removed, and that this is just further proof of Disney trying to push their liberal agenda in Star Wars. What nobody was talking about or mentioning was the fact that these were international posters. Not only that, the posters that were being compared are from 2 completely different countries, so no poster was ever changed. The quote-unquote original poster is in Spanish, and the supposedly changed poster is in Portuguese. This all comes down to the way movies are marketed internationally, and each region has their own dedicated offices to make those decisions. So rest assured, this change has nothing to do with gun violence in the United States. It might have something to do with gun violence in Brazil, I just don't know. But even if these were American posters, I would have the same reaction, and that would be, who cares? It's not like they're going to go through and remove all of the blasters from Solo digitally. But the way that this is being talked about, people are acting like, oh, the future of Star Wars is very uncertain.
Now, I'm wondering what this means for the future of Star Wars under Disney's control, if they'll continue to remove all weapons from Star Wars posters in the future. So that means lightsabers, no blasters, no shooting TIE fighters, and have a disclaimer for anyone who goes to see the film that there are guns and violence in this movie.
To steal a joke made by Wookieepedia left on my Twitter about this topic, yeah, Star Wars is rebranding itself into Star Peace. It's absurd to make that kind of assumption based on international posters and marketing that you clearly did not take even a second to fully research or comprehend before you cranked out a video on it. And that's why I really wanted to make this video as a reaction. It's because of people like this.
I don't know if this story is 100% legit or not. I'm assuming MovieWeb is a good source, but this article that I'm reading looks legit. So up front, if this article turns out to not be for real or trustworthy, I'm saying it up front that I'm not saying it is 100% true, but it looks pretty legit to me. So if you guys can do some research in the comments, you can let me know.
This guy, who does not have a small following, admits in his video that he doesn't know whether or not the article he's referencing is legit. He even asks his viewers to do the research for him and let him know later on. He's saying that he didn't do anything beyond read this one article, and he's mad about it, and boy is he ready to tell you why. He then spends 5 minutes throwing a tantrum over his own assumptions and incomplete information. He calls for Kathleen Kennedy to be fired. He calls for a boycott of Solo. And then at the end of his video, again, he says, and yeah, this might not be legit, so if you guys could let me know, that would be great. Well after the damage has already been done.
So again, let me know if this is legit, if you can, in the comments, but I am done with social justice warrior BS in my politics.
Star Wars Theories video isn't as extreme, but it is similar in tone, and nothing against the guy. We have met, we like each other, but to me, making reactionary, ill-informed videos on controversial topics like this is straight up irresponsible. It's all about getting out content fast to capitalize on clicks. It's fear-mongering, and it's manipulating those fans that might be feeling a little bit unsure about their fandom right now. There are a lot of people out there that rely on people like us for their Star Wars news, and now there's this whole group of fans that are upset about something that they probably shouldn't be upset about because they were fed a bunch of false or incomplete information and assumptions.
That's right. He got some criticisms about how he handled covering the story behind the removal of the guns in the Solo poster because he didn't do the basic level of research and ran with it. So what Theory thinks is an attack actually had been nothing more than just some soft criticisms. Oh, however did Theory sleep at night after that ruthless display of savagery coming from Star Wars Explained?
So it just reinforces more of what I was saying and the stuff that I've been dealing with for the last 8 years from these people, which I haven't said anything. Even when, Alex was doing his This Week in Clickbait and all that stuff, and just sending attacks to my channel, downvoting my videos, comments, and people just starting to get this weird idea about me.
Notice how he talks about these things and yet he doesn't actually show any clips that show Alex to be saying any of these things? I wonder why. Why wouldn't Theory show the evidence to support his claim, to prove what he says to be a fact? Maybe because the evidence that he speaks of doesn't exist. So what I think this boils down to had been that Theory got criticized for his take, and for 6 years he has been holding on to a grudge, which is what he previously did with Elseworlds, holding on to a grudge for 3 years about an editor asking for credit on top of being paid. Like, Theory wants us to believe that Alex had been motivated to make the letter for his unbridled hatred for Theory, based from some emails that have no relevance to this subject, anecdotal evidence that could have been pulled right right out of thin air, a video where Alex gave some soft criticisms, a guilt by association claim, some stories about how Fury had been bullied as a child and how he had been bullied by other YouTubers for the last 8 years, when all it could have been was they gave him some critiques on his work. And if Alex had so much hatred and jealousy as Fury claims here, then why hasn't Alex gone after Fury since the clickbait video, as there have been plenty of opportunities for Alex to dunk on Fury in the past? If Alex had always been looking for a way to get Fury out of the way, then why did Alex wait so long before enacting this master plan? Why now? Why not before? And if this had been the plan from the very beginning, to destroy Star Wars Fury, then why didn't Alex list Fury with the other channels within the goals of the letter if Fury believes he had written it? See, it doesn't make any sense once you start to put some logic into these arguments. He also goes on to mock Alex about how he supposedly couldn't sleep at night because other channels had been more successful than he was, to the point Molly had to coddle him at night, which is something I would have to see to believe Fury, because it sounds like a massive exaggeration on your part, which I can see the appeal of exaggerating these things to make Alex look more and more unhinged. Right, Fury? But again, when someone makes fun of him, it's the end of the world. But when he does it, it's completely justified and isn't something that you should be angry about. However, that's not to say that Alex is out of the woods just yet, as in a text message, he talks about meeting Fury of how he didn't like him that much before, but the meeting had humanized him, which is a weird way to put things, but after meeting Fury, he now likes him. But the whole thing about smack talk is a minor thing, and you are going to get that in every community, especially ones that revolve around gaming. So all you can say about Alex is that he is a little bit weird. Say what you will about Molly, but I'm not convinced that Alex is involved just because of who he is married to. Imagine if that logic is applied to other things in the real world. If Fury wanted to show his disdain for being used as an example in the letter, or if he wanted to defend the channels listed for demonetization, then I wouldn't take issue with it. But here he has clearly manipulated the contents of the letter to serve his meticulous needs. Maybe the anecdotal evidence has merit in some places. However, considering Fury claims attacks on his channel and critiques on his work are the same thing, then I'm not really confident in what he claims in these stories. If we go back to his first point about how Alex worked a full-time job and that he had to do everything for the content at night, Fury tried to debunk that by saying that because Molly is a co-host to Star Wars Explained now, then that would mean that she had always been a co-host or half of Star Wars Explained.
Are you able to dedicate all day, every day to this? If so, I'm crazy jealous. I currently have a full-time job and have to do everything at night. Actually, you told everyone at the Lego booth in Chicago that your wife helps divide the workload into two.
When we don't know that to be the case for sure. But even if that had been the case from the very beginning, then it doesn't necessarily mean that Alex had lied in the email. As how do we know that Molly helped in content creation back in 2016? Maybe she had a full-time job when the channel was in its infancy and didn't have the time to help Alex or had no interest in doing so. It's almost like the community have very low standards for what proves a claim to be a fact, which isn't a good precedent. Almost like Fury knows that his audience will take what he says at face value, so that means he doesn't need to pride himself on these cases. But after this, Fury thanks everyone for seeing the logic behind his shaky conspiracy theory, and he goes on to milk this victim status when he wasn't the victim at all.
They realized that failed, and then they tried to take away all of my livelihood, everything that I worked hard for, by a coordinated attack to pull the plug. They really think that they are the good guys, and they have zero self-awareness. They have an unbelievable amount of hubris. But finally, at the end, after 8 years, man, you're literally trying to kill me. You're trying to suffocate me and trying to take away everything I've worked for.
It's very interesting that Fury says everyone else doesn't have self-awareness, but then he comes out with stuff like this.
No, I released that so people would believe me when I'm talking about my claims. You know, it's something called receipts.
It's having proof.
Well, if that is the case, Theory, then maybe you should show us a clip of Alex telling his viewers to downvote your videos and to hate on you, as you conveniently forgot to show us that. I'm basically gonna say what I said in the Dark Viper video. If you're walking around smelling shit everywhere you go, then maybe it is you who stepped in dog shit and not everybody else.
If you continue to lie, we'll take legal action against you.
And the cherry on top had been when Fury had been covering the Acolyte, he made such a big deal over Wookieepedia changing the birth date of Adi Mundi because he had been featured in the show, which on the website there are 2 tabs or directories for each piece of the lore, history or characters. One for the Legends era, which had been everything before the Disney takeover, and one for the Disney canon, which includes the main saga and everything Disney has put out since they bought the company. So Star Wars Fury, the guy who made his career off of covering the lore, doesn't understand what Wookieepedia does in recording and documenting the lore, which I hate to break it to you, but there is nothing wrong with updating things when new information surfaces, as that is what they do, and it's the same for each franchise or fandom. They did it for the Legends era, and they certainly do it for Disney canon. However, Wookieepedia had come out soon after this with a story that they had been receiving death threats because of the minor change to the birth date of Adi Mundi, which they had attributed this to the Fury fans, which I'm just going to assume that Wookieepedia saw Fury whining about this on his stream and put 2 and 2 together. But apparently, according to them, he said, "Fix Wookieepedia," which I haven't seen Fury say this in my research. But then Fury pulls out his trump card when threatening Wookieepedia with legal action, like it's his go-to, which isn't a good look on him. And I think it's safe to say that Fury can't prove that he was defamed by Wookieepedia, because he would need to show the damages when it's arguable that there were no damages to pull from, since his fans eat from the palm of his hand anyway. And others had chimed in, carrying this sentiment on YouTube and Twitter, telling Fury that he doesn't have a case. But that didn't stop him from making an even bigger fool of himself on his main channel, when he uploaded a video talking about it, threatening legal action despite not being able to show the damages, which is a dumb move, especially when Fury claims that Wookieepedia had been lying about his company and his fans when Wookieepedia said nothing about his company. And how would Fury know that his fans didn't go after Wookieepedia, sending these threats towards them? As we have seen before, they aren't exactly very careful about announcing who they watch or where they came from. Oh, and I just love the argument he comes out with of how those who record and document the lore of Star Wars simply shouldn't because it came from a show he didn't like.
The watch party. And you guys were spamming chat like crazy, like, check Wookieepedia, they just changed it. And I did, and I reacted to it. I'm like, holy crap, they're actually changing it in real time with like no reason whatsoever, just because the show says so, and like changes everything like that. What was pre-established for they had what they had written for however many years, and then they just boom like that change it on a show that really makes no sense and has no business putting Kiadi in there.
Which is some stellar logic you've got there, Fury. But then Fury criticizes Wookieepedia, saying they have a large presence on the internet, alluding to they have to be careful of the messages they put out due to their massive following. But this same sort of logic isn't applied to himself, with his audience being over 3 million subscribers, which is odd that you would give Wookieepedia criticism over this when you don't adhere to your own advice. And the premise of the video betrays his logic, as if we turn the tables around and it had been Wookieepedia threatening him with a lawsuit, I guarantee you, Fury would claim it to be censorship. In conclusion, Star Wars Fury has made some great content in the past, but when it comes to matters outside of Star Wars, he lets his emotions be his guide, to the point this raw and vivid attitude gets him into trouble, whether that is in burning bridges with those he once had been friends with, or in poisoning the dialogue so any conversation you could have with him becomes unproductive. In his world, he is right, while everyone around him is wrong, while putting himself above such things as showing evidence to meet the claims he spouts, and when he needs to prove something, he relies mostly on anecdotal stories that, for all we know, could have been manufactured from his own imagination. While there have been a couple of instances where Fury had been wronged, these are very few and in between, and aren't as frequent as he wants people to believe. To the point he moralizes things but then goes on to commit the actions he claims to be against. Fury is in his 30s crying about being bullied on the internet for 8 years by other YouTubers, acting like he has to live with the memories of being criticized for the things he does online. But what do you expect from a guy who creates these standards for everyone else to live by, but doesn't follow through, acting like these are the rules for thee, but just not for me? Just because George Lucas says it's a film for 12-year-olds doesn't mean you have to act like one. But hey, that's just a theory. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you all real soon, as I've got a whole bunch of topics I want to share with you. Special thanks to the members of the channel, your support is greatly appreciated, and be sure to leave this video having a good one, whether you are a Fury stan or not.